This is not a drill. This is not a simulation. This is a red alert for the entire global system. In the last several hours, the heart of the world's energy supply has been set ablaze. A coordinated, sophisticated, and devastating attack has struck the nerve center of Saudi Arabia's oil infrastructure, and the shockwaves are already threatening to trigger a worldwide economic meltdown. The target: Saudi Aramco, the crown jewel of the kingdom and the single most important energy company on earth. The aggressor. According to initial, explosive claims, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. This is a direct act of aggression by a state actor against the critical infrastructure of another. An escalation so profound, it threatens to drag the entire Middle East, and potentially the world, into a conflict of unimaginable consequences. Stay with us as we break down every facet of this developing crisis. We have the latest intelligence on the weapons used, the exact targets hit, the catastrophic impact on global oil markets, and the immediate, high-stakes reactions from Riyadh, Tehran, and a stunned White House. This is Global Crisis Radar, and your minute-by-minute briefing starts now. Let's begin with the anatomy of the attack. The first reports began to filter out approximately 6 hours ago, just before dawn, local time. Initial bulletins spoke of multiple explosions and massive fires at key Saudi Aramco facilities. It is now clear this was not an isolated incident or an industrial accident. This was a meticulously planned military strike. Our sources confirm the primary targets were the Ablaze processing plant and the Khurais oil field. To call these facilities important is a gross understatement. Ablaze is, without exaggeration, the single most critical piece of oil infrastructure on the planet. It processes more than 2/3 of Saudi Arabia's crude oil, removing sulfur and other impurities before it is shipped to terminals for export. It is the jugular vein of the global energy market. Simultaneously, the Khurais oil field, one of the kingdom's largest, was also struck. This two-pronged assault demonstrates a level of sophistication and strategic planning designed to inflict maximum disruption. The attackers weren't just trying to send a message. They were trying to cripple the Saudi energy sector in a single, decisive blow. The fires, according to eyewitnesses and initial satellite thermal imaging, are immense, burning with an intensity that suggests significant structural damage. Now let's examine the claim of responsibility. Within 2 hours of the initial explosions, a statement was issued via Iran's state-controlled media. It was direct, and it was chilling. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Aerospace Force claimed full responsibility for what they termed Operation Retribution. The statement alleges the use of a new generation of long-range ballistic missiles and suicide drones launched from IRGC bases inside Iranian territory. This is a critical distinction. In past attacks on Gulf infrastructure, Iran has often relied on proxies, such as the Houthi rebels in Yemen, to provide a layer of plausible deniability. This time, there is no ambiguity. The IRGC has put its name on this attack, a brazen declaration that represents a fundamental shift in the rules of engagement in the Persian Gulf. They are daring the world to respond. The strategic implications of this direct claim are staggering. It bypasses all diplomatic off-ramps and places the blame squarely on the Iranian state. For years, the shadow war between Iran and its regional adversaries has been fought through covert operations and proxy forces. This act rips away that veil, turning a clandestine conflict into an open confrontation between nations. The response from Riyadh has been one of controlled fury. An emergency session of the Saudi Council of Ministers was convened. The official statement from the Ministry of Energy confirms terrorist attacks on its facilities. While they did not immediately name Iran, they stated the attacks originated from outside the kingdom's borders and reserved the right to respond to this aggression. The most critical piece of information from the Saudi statement is the damage assessment. They have confirmed a temporary suspension of production from the targeted facilities. The number is catastrophic. 5.7 million barrels of crude oil per day have been taken offline. To put that in perspective, that is more than half of Saudi Arabia's total output and nearly 6% of the entire global daily oil supply. Gone. In an instant. And that brings us to the global economic fallout, which has been nothing short of a bloodbath. As markets opened in Asia, then Europe, and now pre-market trading in New York, the reaction has been panic. The price of Brent crude, the international benchmark, didn't just rise, it exploded. We witnessed the single largest percentage point jump in oil prices in over 3 decades. Within minutes, prices surged by over 20%, rocketing past the $100 per barrel mark for the first time in years. This isn't just a price spike, it's a paradigm shift. Every single product you buy, every service you use, is linked to the price of energy. The surge will translate directly into higher gasoline prices, higher shipping costs, and rampant inflation. Major indices are in free fall. The Nikkei, the DAX, the FTSE, all are down significantly. Wall Street is bracing for a cataclysmic opening bell. We are seeing a classic flight to safety. Investors are dumping stocks and rushing into traditional safe haven assets like gold and U.S. Treasury bonds. The Volatility Index, or VIX, often called the Fear Index, has more than doubled. Central banks around the world, already struggling with post-pandemic inflation, now face an impossible choice: raise interest rates to fight this new oil-fueled inflation and risk a deeper recession, or hold steady and watch as the cost of living spirals out of control for billions of people. This attack wasn't just on Saudi Arabia, it was an attack on the stability of the entire global economy. Now, all eyes turn to Washington. The United States is Saudi Arabia's primary security guarantor. An attack of this magnitude is a direct challenge to American power and credibility in the Middle East. The White House has been in crisis mode since the news broke. The president convened an emergency meeting of the National Security Council. The initial public statement from the press secretary was brief but forceful. It condemned the attack in the strongest possible terms and affirmed that the U.S. is committed to ensuring global energy markets remain stable and well supplied. They announced the authorization of a release from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, or SPR, to help cushion the immediate price shock. But this is a temporary fix, a bandage on a gaping wound. Behind the scenes, the Pentagon is operating at its highest alert level. U.S. Central Command, or CENTCOM, has been tasked with providing a full range of military options to the president. These options likely range from further tightening sanctions on Iran to targeted cyber attacks, to direct kinetic military strikes against the IRGC facilities believed to have launched the missiles. The deployment of American military assets in the region is already significant, but we can expect that to be massively reinforced in the coming hours and days. The key question is whether Washington has the appetite for a direct military confrontation with Iran, a conflict that would dwarf the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan in scale and complexity. The pressure from hawks in Congress and from allies like Saudi Arabia and Israel for a decisive military response will be immense. This single event has thrown the entire regional balance of power into chaos. Israel, which views Iran's missile program as an existential threat, will be watching the American response with extreme prejudice. A weak or delayed U.S. response could embolden Israeli leadership to take matters into their own hands, opening up a potential second front. The United Arab Emirates, another key Gulf state, has raised its military alert to the maximum level. Their own economic hubs in Dubai and Abu Dhabi are now considered potential targets in any wider conflict. The stakes for them are just as high as for the Saudis. We are seeing emergency diplomatic cables flying between Abu Dhabi, Riyadh, and Washington, and we cannot ignore the roles of Russia and China. As major energy consumers and geopolitical players, their reactions are crucial. Moscow, an ally of Tehran, has called for restraint on all sides, a predictable but telling statement that seeks to deflect blame from Iran. Beijing, the world's largest importer of crude oil, is deeply vulnerable to this supply shock. They have issued a statement urging a calm and rational response to protect the global economy. Their primary concern is stability, but their long-term strategic alignments could be tested by this crisis. The most immediate military flashpoint to watch is the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow waterway, controlled by Iran, is the transit point for roughly a fifth of the world's oil supply. If the U.S. moves to retaliate militarily, it is almost certain that the IRGC Navy will attempt to close the strait, an act that would be a declaration of war and would send energy prices into the stratosphere, far beyond what we are seeing today. So let's step back and analyze the deeper implications. What does this attack truly signify? First, it represents a catastrophic failure of intelligence and air defense. The fact that a swarm of missiles and drones could penetrate the airspace of one of the most heavily defended countries on Earth and strike its most valuable assets is a chilling revelation. It calls into question the effectiveness of multi-billion-dollar U.S.-made defense systems, like the Patriot. Second, this is the ultimate expression of Iran's strategy of asymmetric warfare. Unable to match the U.S. or its allies in conventional military power, Tehran has invested heavily in missiles, drones, and proxy forces to create leverage and project power. This attack is them cashing in that investment, demonstrating that they can inflict unacceptable economic pain on their adversaries at a time and place of their choosing. Third, The timing is no coincidence. This comes after months of stalled nuclear negotiations and the imposition of even more crippling economic sanctions by the West. From Tehran's perspective, this may be a desperate, high-risk gamble, a way of saying, if we are not allowed to benefit from the global economy, then no one will. It is a form of coercive diplomacy written in fire and steel. We are now standing on the knife's edge of a regional war. The path of de-escalation is narrow and treacherous. Any miscalculation, any misunderstanding, or any further military action could ignite the Middle Eastern tinderbox. The Saudi response will be critical. Will they retaliate in kind, targeting Iranian oil facilities or military bases? Or will they rely on the United States to act? The American decision in the next 24 to 48 hours will likely define the geopolitical landscape for the next decade. A military strike on Iran could trigger a devastating, prolonged war that would shatter the global economy. A purely diplomatic or economic response, however, might be perceived as weakness, emboldening Iran and shaking the confidence of U.S. allies across the globe. The world is holding its breath. The firestorms over Aramco are not just a regional crisis. They are a global one. The economic stability we have taken for granted is fragile, and it is now breaking. The immediate consequences are clear: higher prices, volatile markets, and profound uncertainty. The long-term consequences could be a new, dark chapter of global conflict. We will be tracking every development, every statement, and every military maneuver around the clock. The situation is incredibly fluid, and the stakes could not be higher. What happens in the next few hours in the situation rooms of Washington, Riyadh, and Tehran will affect us all. This is a defining moment. Stay informed. Stay prepared. For the absolute latest, breaking updates on the U.S.-Iran conflict and this unfolding economic crisis, make sure you are subscribed to Global Crisis Radar and have enabled all notifications. We are your frontline source in a world on the brink. Thank you for watching.